From shaking a rattlesnake out of a cooler into a hedge fund shark's face to walking into a room full of men beating the woman he loves and walking back out the only one still breathing, Rip Wheeler is the closest thing the Dutton Ranch has to a loaded gun that thinks. He doesn't give speeches. He doesn't make threats he won't keep. He just gets handed the problem nobody else will touch, and the problem stops existing. This is every time Rip Wheeler was a complete badass. Now here's the thing I want you to keep in the back of your mind the whole way down this list because it's the key to the whole man. Rip isn't a badass because he's violent. Half the men on this show are violent. Rip is a badass because he has a code, and the code never bends. Not when it's easy, not when it costs him, not even when the Duttons themselves start to wobble. John Dutton lies to himself. Jamie lies to everybody. Beth burns the world down. But Rip is the most honest man on that ranch because he decided a long time ago exactly who he belonged to. And he has never once flinched from what that costs. He's also quietly the most legally exposed man in the entire story because he's the one whose hands actually do the work. Keep both of those in mind. We're counting down 13, from the everyday cowboy iron to the single moment that defines everything he is. Subscribe before we start, because this one earns its ending. Number 13. Number 13. Making a cowboy out of a stray. Start small with the version of Rip most people forget is a badass at all. Rip the teacher. When a mouthy, half-feral kid like Carter shows up at the ranch with nothing but attitude and empty pockets, Rip doesn't coddle him and he doesn't run him off. He puts a shovel in his hand, tells him the truth about what this life is, and starts the slow, brutal work of turning a stray into a man. And here's why it belongs on a badass list. Anybody can throw a punch. It takes a different kind of hard man to look at a worthless kid nobody wanted and see something worth saving, then be willing to be hated for the time it takes to save him. Because that's the job. Rip has to be the wall the kid throws himself against until the kid figures out he's not going anywhere, and a wall doesn't get thanked, not for a long time. Rip runs the bunkhouse the way John runs the ranch, with an iron rule that everybody secretly wants to live up to. He doesn't ask to be respected. He just becomes the man you'd be embarrassed to disappoint, and there's no faster way to turn a stray into a cowboy than that. He's doing for Carter exactly what John once did for him, and he knows it, even if he'd never say it out loud. Verdict: the quiet badass. The one who builds men instead of just breaking them. But make no mistake about what Rip does to people who haven't earned that patience, because the next time, the gloves come off in public. Number 12, the name that clears a room. There's a version of Rip that never has to raise a hand, and it might be the most intimidating one. Walk into a bar, a sale barn, an auction, anywhere the Duttons have enemies, and watch what happens when men realize who just walked in. Rip has spent decades building a reputation so specific that his presence alone rearranges a room. Loud men go quiet. Brave men find somewhere else to be. That's not luck, and it's not just size. That's a resume. Every man who ever ran his mouth at Rip and regretted it is a story that traveled, and the stories do the work now so his fists don't have to. I love this about him because it's the opposite of the guys who have to prove it every time. Rip already proved it. He proved it so thoroughly that the proving is over, and all that's left is the silence he walks into. Verdict: a badass measured in the fights he doesn't have to have anymore. But when he does decide it's time, he does not do it halfway. And sometimes the man on the receiving end is someone he loves. Number 11, disciplining Lloyd. This is the one that shows you the code has no favorites. Lloyd is the oldest hand on the ranch, the closest thing Rip has to a father figure in that bunkhouse. And when Lloyd lets jealousy boil over and attacks a younger hand, nearly killing him over a woman, Rip does not look the other way because it's family. He steps in and he handles it hard, the way the code demands, even though it breaks something in him to do it. And that's the whole point. A weaker man protects the people he loves from the rules. Rip holds the people he loves to the rules, especially them, because the second the code bends for your favorites, it isn't a code anymore, it's just favoritism with a hat on. And you can see what it cost him. There's no relish in it, no power trip, just a man doing a terrible necessary thing to someone he loves because the ranch only works if the code is the code for everyone. He'd have taken a bullet for Lloyd the day before. He'd take one for him the day after. But in that moment, the rule comes first, because that's the deal every man in that bunkhouse signed up for, Lloyd included. Watching him discipline the one man on that ranch he'd call a father in the bunkhouse, that's the moment you understand Rip would hold the line against his own heart if the ranch needed him to. Verdict: badass loyalty to the rule over the friendship. Cold, correct, and costly. But the code doesn't only point inward. When outsiders come looking for a fight on Dutton ground, Rip is the answer to a question they should never have asked. Number 10, the biker gang. Here's the pure, uncut, crowd-pleasing version. A biker gang cuts through a fence and rolls onto Dutton land like they own it, picking a fight with the first hands they see. Bad idea. When they're told, more than politely, to move along and they refuse, Rip arrives. And he doesn't square up for some honorable one-on-one. He gets in a truck and he mows their motorcycles into scrap metal, then wades into what's left. This is Rip understanding something most tough guys never learn. A fight isn't about honor. It's about winning decisively, so there's never a round two. He doesn't fight the bikers. He erases their ability to fight. He takes away their toys, their pride, and their nerve in about 10 seconds, and turns a gang looking for trouble into a group of men looking for their teeth in the grass. And there's a message buried in the wreckage, too. He could have called the sheriff. He could have just fought them. Instead, he destroyed the thing they rode in on, because Rip wants the story to travel. Wants the next gang, and the one after that, to hear what happens to men who mistake Dutton land for a place they're allowed to be. It's brutal, it's a little funny, and it is completely, gloriously effective. Verdict: the badass as a force of nature. No rules, just results, and a warning left smoking in the dirt. But the truly hard part of Rip's job isn't the loud stuff like this. It's the quiet work in the dark that nobody's supposed to know about. Number 9, mercy with a shovel. Consider Walker, the singing cowboy who never really wanted the Dutton life and kept trying to leave it. By the ranch's brutal logic, a man who knows what they know and wants out is a loose end, and loose ends have a destination. Rip is sent to handle it. And here's where Rip becomes more interesting than a simple enforcer, because he doesn't do the easy final thing. He gives Walker a choice most men in his position never get. Stay, keep your mouth shut, and live. But don't mistake the mercy for softness, because it comes wrapped in a promise. The deal Rip offers is survival with a leash on it, and both men know exactly what happens if the leash ever snaps. That's the razor Rip walks that nobody gives him credit for. He is the ranch's mercy and the ranch's threat in the same breath. The man who decides who gets a second chance and who gets a hole in the ground. And he carries the weight of both. Verdict: a badass with a conscience he can't afford to have. Giving mercy he'll be blamed for either way. But sparing Walker is the light version of Rip's darkest job, because most of the men who become loose ends don't get the choice, and Rip is the one who handles what's left. Number 8, the keeper of the train station. Every family this powerful has a graveyard, and the Duttons have theirs, a stretch of ground where their problems go and never come back. And here's the truth the show dresses up as loyalty. Rip is the one who does it. When a man needs to disappear so the Duttons can keep their empire in their clean hands, Rip is the one driving, the one working, the one carrying a secret that would put the whole family in prison for the rest of their lives. And I want to be straight about what that actually means, because the show makes it feel noble, and it's worth remembering it isn't. In the real world, what Rip does out there isn't loyalty. It's a stack of felonies with his name on every one of them. He is, by a mile, the most legally exposed person in the entire Dutton operation, because he's the one whose hands are literally dirty. The Duttons give the orders. Rip takes the risk. He absorbs the sin so the family can stay a family, and he never once asks them to share the weight. That's not a henchman. That's a man who decided the people he loves get to keep their souls, and he'll carry the stain for all of them. Verdict: the badass is the sin eater, doing the damning work so the family doesn't have to, knowing exactly what it would cost him if it ever came to light. Now, that reveal I promised, because a man doesn't become this without a beginning, and Rip's is the most important scene in his entire life. Number 7. The boy who killed his father. Here it is, the origin that rewrites every single thing you've watched him do. Long before the brand, before Beth, before any of it, Rip was a boy on a hardscrabble farm when his own father turned violent and lethal against the family, and that boy, terrified, cornered with nowhere to run, killed him to survive. And then he had nothing and no one, a child who'd done the unthinkable and had nowhere left in the world to go. And that's when John Dutton found him and did the thing that bought his loyalty for life. He didn't turn the boy in. He took him in. He gave a child with blood on his hands and no family a place to belong, a bunk, a purpose, and eventually a name that meant something. So now watch the whole man snap into focus. Every dangerous thing Rip does for the Duttons, every risk, every body, every year of silence, it's all one long answer to a debt he's been paying since he was a kid. John Dutton didn't just give Rip a job. He gave a lost, damned boy the only family that would ever have him, and Rip has spent his entire life proving he was worth saving. Verdict: the most important badass moment of all, and it's the one where a terrified child survived the unsurvivable. Everything after this is gratitude with a body count, and the deepest expression of that gratitude is a mark he chose to wear. Number 6, taking the brand. Most men on that ranch are branded as a mark of ownership, a warning, a point of no return. For Rip, it's something else entirely. It's a choice, and it's the proudest one he ever made. When Rip takes the Y, he isn't being claimed. He's claiming. He is saying, out loud and forever, that he belongs to this family and this ground, that there is no version of his life that isn't the Yellowstone, that they can burn it into his skin because it was already burned into everything else. And here's the quiet, hard truth underneath the romance of it, the thing the show doesn't dwell on. That brand is also a confession. It legally and permanently ties him to the ranch and everything the ranch does. Rip knows that. He knows the mark that says he belongs is the same mark that could help hang him. And he takes it anyway, with his eyes open, because to Rip, a life without the Duttons isn't a safer life, it's not a life at all. The bravest thing about Rip isn't that he'll die for the brand. It's that he chose to wear the one thing that guarantees he can never walk away clean. Verdict: the badass who volunteered to be owned, because belonging to something was worth more to him than being free of it. Which brings us to the one person who ever made him want more than the ranch. Number 5, loving Beth Dutton. Stay with me, because loving Beth Dutton is one of the most badass things any man has ever done, and I'll defend that. Beth is a hurricane. She's cruel, she's self-destructive, she pushes away everyone who gets close specifically to see if they'll leave like everyone else did. And Rip doesn't leave, ever. He loves her with a steadiness that would break most men, absorbing the worst of her and never once using it as a reason to walk. And the badass part isn't that he tolerates her. It's that he's the only person alive who was never afraid of her. Everyone else in that universe handles Beth like a live wire, choosing their words, bracing for the blast. Rip just loves her, plainly, like it's the easiest thing in the world, and he's the one man who can say the hard thing to her face and not flinch when she throws it back. In doing that, he gives the most damaged person on the show the one thing she never believed she'd get. Someone who saw all of it, the cruelty and the self-loathing and the scorched earth, and stayed anyway. She spent her whole life proving she was unlovable. He spent his quietly proving her wrong without ever making a speech about it. When he finally says the words, in the middle of the worst night of her life, it recolors the whole series. The hardest man on the ranch has the softest, most unshakable heart on it, and he only ever spends it on her. Verdict, a different kind of badass entirely. The kind that shows up as constancy instead of violence. The strongest man on the show and the gentlest, aimed at the one person who needed both. But gentleness has a limit, and God help the men who found it. Number 4, protecting the family in blood. When the Beck brothers declared war on the Duttons and the militia came for the family, when they took Tate, when they hurt the people Rip has spent his life protecting, Rip didn't grieve, and he didn't wait. He went to war. This is the version of Rip with the safety off, the one who becomes an instrument of pure retribution the moment someone lays a hand on his people. And notice the trigger, because it's always the same one. Rip is slow to anger over anything that's about him. Insult him, threaten him, spit in his face. It barely registers, because a man who's already survived the worst thing that can happen to a person doesn't rattle easy. But threaten the family, threaten the child, threaten Beth, threaten John, and the man who builds strays into cowboys turns into something you cannot reason with, cannot buy off, and cannot stop. That's the tell of who he really is. Rip has no self to defend, not really. He gave that up on a farm a long time ago. What he has instead is them. This borrowed family that took in a doomed boy, and a man defending the only thing he has left is the most dangerous man alive. Because he isn't fighting to win. He's fighting like a man with nothing behind him but the people he'd die for. Verdict. The badass at his most terrifying, because it's love doing the fighting, and love doesn't tire and doesn't quit. But for sheer style, one kill on Rip's record will never be topped. Number 3. The snake in the cooler, Roarke Morris. The smiling hedge fund predator market equities sent to take the ranch, the kind of man who fly fishes in your river like he already holds the deed. He escalated a corporate war into attempts on the family's lives, and he did it with a grin, certain a rancher could never touch a man like him. He never understood who he was dealing with until it was crawling toward his face. Because Rip's answer to Roarke is the single most creative kill in the entire series. No gun, no confrontation, no raised voice. Just a walk down to the river with a cooler in his hand, a simple, almost friendly question. Is this yours? And a rattlesnake he'd shaken into a fury, delivered to the exact spot on a man's face where it would do the most work. And then he just walks away and lets Montana finish the job. It's cold, it's patient, it's almost artistic, and it tells you everything about how Rip's mind works. He didn't need a shootout, because a shootout is a risk and a witness and a body with a bullet in it. He read the man, read the setting, read the fact that Roarke thought he was safe by that pretty river, and he used the land itself as the weapon. That's the Dutton way distilled. You don't beat the outsider with more money or better lawyers. You remind him he came to a place that has been swallowing men like him for 100 years. A predator came to Montana thinking he was at the top of the food chain. Rip reminded him there's always something with more teeth waiting by the water. Verdict. The most stylish badass moment on the show, 100 years of Dutton ruthlessness delivered in a picnic cooler. But style isn't the same as heart, and the 2 moments above this one are where Rip stops being a great character and becomes the soul of the whole show. Number 2, burying the only father he ever had. When John Dutton is gone, the man who raised him, saved him, named him, Rip doesn't fall apart in front of anyone because that was never who John needed him to be. He does what he's always done. He carries it. He handles what has to be handled. He holds the ranch and the family together with his bare hands. And only when he's alone does the weight of it finally show on his face. And this is where the whole arc lands, because think about what that boy got. A terrified kid who killed his own father and had nothing was given a second father who saw a son in him. And Rip spent the rest of his life earning it, and then had to bury it. The grief hits so hard precisely because we watched the debt get paid in full from both sides. John gave Rip a life. Rip gave John his whole loyalty, and at the end, a proper goodbye. The hardest man on the ranch, brought low by love for the man who made him. That's not weakness. That's the entire point of him. Verdict: the badass revealed as a devoted son, holding the line even in grief because that's the only way he knows to say thank you. And the moment that defines him above all the rest is the one where everything he is came together in about 30 seconds. Number 1, saving Beth. This is it. The Beck brothers send men to Beth's office. Men who kill her assistant and then turn on Beth to do the unspeakable, a gun already at her, her odds already gone. It is the most horrifying scene in the series, and it is seconds from its worst possible ending. And then the door opens, and Rip is there. He walks into a gun, and he does not stop. He takes down every man in that room with a fury that has no ceiling, absorbs whatever it costs him, and does not slow until the threat is simply gone and Beth is safe. And then, this is why it's number 1. The man who just did that violence turns to the shaking, broken woman on the floor, and for the first time in the entire series, he tells her he loves her. In the same breath. The same man. That is Rip Wheeler distilled into a single moment, a capacity for violence that is total and terrifying, pointed with perfect precision at the people who threaten his family, and underneath it, a love so deep it comes out at the exact instant he's most dangerous. That's the whole man, not the violence and not the tenderness. Both, fused, inseparable, aimed his entire life at the family that saved a doomed boy and gave him something worth protecting. Rip Wheeler is a complete badass not because he can end a room full of men, but because he'd walk into that room every single time for them without a heartbeat's hesitation and still have love left over on the other side. Verdict: the number 1 Rip moment, and the reason he's the best character on the show. The deadliest man on the ranch and the most devoted in one open door. So there it is. Every time Rip Wheeler was a complete badass and the code underneath all of it. Here's what I keep coming back to. Rip is the only man in the entire Yellowstone universe who never once betrays what he loves. Not for money, not for power, not to save himself. In a show full of liars and schemers and people selling each other out for a piece of dirt, there's one man who simply decided who he belonged to and never wavered, no matter what it cost his body or his soul. That's not just a badass. That's the closest thing this brutal show has to an honest man. So tell me below, which Rip moment is your number 1? The rattlesnake, the open door, or something I put too low? I've made my case. Now I want to hear yours. And I've got a feeling some of you are going to fight me on that top spot. I'll see you out there.